Great, thank you. Okay, so I'm Shamal Faily from Robert Gordon University. Like a number of you, I'm in the second year of my fellowship. This theme is really about the practices embodied in the advice, guidance, standards, and frameworks for secure software development. If you were at last year's showcase, you might have seen some of these words already. The thing I want to bring home here is that not everybody who is engaged with secure development practices is a software developer. And that means we need to consider practice associated with all the stakeholders, those included with design, and this year some other wider stakeholders as well that have also got a part to play. Now, last year, what I was interested in is seeing how we could make good, well-known best practice dominant. This year, I've been focusing specifically on the idea of knowledge asymmetries and education, because these were things that were coming out of last year's work, and challenges and overcoming challenges to overcome the challenges that address them. So here's a slide from one of our workshops. We have Alice and Bob. They have security requirements that they don't know. Perhaps security requirements that they know that they can't convey. And when we've got Carol, our security experts, who can't get at them because they have knowledge that they can't actually convey to Carol. And Carol only really knows so much about what Alice and Bob are doing, which stymies her ability to get these requirements on her own. You know, classic knowledge asymmetry, not specific to secure development practices or even computing in general. And this reinforces the idea that these challenges don't just affect designers and developers, but other indirect stakeholders too, like educators and policymakers. So what we've done this year is, firstly, we refreshed the Secure Development Practices Higher Education Institute capability map that we developed last year. So last year, we noted that there are about 27 higher education institutes that had what we'd consider capability in terms of secure development practices research. This year, we didn't see any drop, but we did notice a slight increase of 6. Some of this was from staff movement, but some of this was also from organic growth, which actually is quite a pleasing insight. We also ran 2 community workshops. We ran one on secure development practices education in conjunction with the Scottish Informatics and Computer Science Alliance, and we talked about issues ranging from knowledge transfer from research to education all the way through to secure development practices education to other disciplines. Because remember, not everyone who is a practitioner is a software developer. We have people who come from social science courses, product design courses that also have a part to play. And we had a really interesting panel discussion with people involved from software engineering education through to the delivery of relevant research, and with an interest in getting that into practice. More recently, we had a workshop on addressing security design knowledge asymmetries and what secure development practices can learn from other disciplines. So we had panelists from business, law, human factors, and even arts. And we had a lot of very interesting focused discussion around what we can learn in terms of framing goals, risks, and validation. Now, these workshop insights are really important because in lieu of the difficulty of running studies, we rely on these workshops to get insights that might be otherwise hard to reach. Right, okay, so what I'm going to do now is share some of the ideas and contentions that we uncovered this year. And one of the consistent points is that these insights came from outside secure development practices. And this kind of suggests that we actually may well need work from other teams to address them. So one of the first things that was discussed, one of the things that were discussed in one of the workshops is this idea that developing secure software may well be an occupational hazard, because even though developers may not have the power to address the problems they find, they often end up with the responsibility of fixing them, and this could well put a burden on them. So education around mental resilience, well-being, and perhaps the form that occupational hazards take may well be something that needs to become part of the secure development practice curriculum, and is certainly an area that warrants further investigation. Something else we also talked about in that education workshop is this notion of an education readiness level, because we've all been talking about the worries and qualms we've got getting research into education. But one of the things we discuss is this idea of this implicit readiness level, depending on what level of the curriculum you want to put the research into, be it first year undergraduate, specialized MSc, and how we might go about assessing things at different stages. So instructors have this readiness level, which perhaps may not be as readily understood by the people that are producing the research for educational consumption. Finally, we talked about in our last workshop this notion that security knowledge asymmetries may actually be a symptom of security power asymmetries, because what tended to come out of a lot of discussion is this idea that security issues often get thrown over the wall. Sorry, security problems get thrown over the wall to security teams by those people that have got the power to actually throw things over the wall. And those people with security knowledge may have less power to actually address that. And some of our arts and politics colleagues were telling us that this is actually a known problem in other disciplines, and there's a need for those people that are in power to cede that power before we can start getting at some of these knowledge asymmetries that we want to address. Okay, so the research that we've been doing in parallel with the outreach has been a little bit slow burn, but as is typical, they seem to start burning brightly when the funding runs to an end. So we'll share some of the things that we've been looking at, and we wanted to see how security design knowledge asymmetries can be addressed in different places in the design process. So one place we've been looking has been in tools for specifying system specifications and models more generally, and how we can augment these tools to capture needs and the complementary relationship between different models, such that when we validate things, we can throw open or cast light on knowledge asymmetry. So how might model validation help different stakeholders perceive knowledge that they didn't realize they had, or identify knowledge that other people have that is relevant to actually get at? And we've been focusing specifically on access control, because this turns out to be a really hard security design problem, because as much as people talk about the difficulty of developing, a usable authentication mechanism, really, at least you can see the authentication mechanism. Access controls are not something people can directly perceive. There are often several layers of indirection behind. So it's an area that really needs security design insight. The second place we've been looking is around user experience design techniques in more generally. Now, there's been quite a lot of work looking at the notion of technology abuse via IoT devices, threat modeling, etc. So we've been doing a little bit of work with our colleagues in the law school. I'm pleased to see some of them are actually here, to use criminological theories around victimhood and qualitative case data to try to build archetypes of tech abuse survivors. So the intent here is not to reinvent the wheel, but look at how we can operationalize some of the research people have been doing into design processes. And we're learning all sorts of things as we go along. We're learning about the suitability of data sources, research questions for coding data, the expertise needed to build and use archetypes, whether it's appropriate for certain designers to actually have to use these archetypes at all if they don't have the knowledge. So very much something that's work in process that we're pleased that this RISCS Fellowship has been able to kick off. So just a final key message to sort of take away. This is still a methodologically challenging area to work in. It's pleasing to see that we're starting to see a lot more qualitative research around developer security and privacy needs and expectations, and that's good. Unfortunately, a lot of these case studies are saying the same thing. We need better collaboration between product and security stakeholders. So I'm hoping that some of the things we've talked about is going to inspire studies into some more focused areas. In terms of actually evaluating innovation, we still have these methodological hygiene factors that we need to overcome. There is still this perception by decision makers that innovation to secure development practices is just too risky to engage with. I would contend that, given the thought that we put into the ethical imports of some of the research we do, that this innovation might be less risky than actually not doing anything. So I hope that this is something that people consider. The second is that working with researchers in this space is innovative and is invasive and time consuming and unlikely to lead to any sort of useful return on investment. Our metric in this research is not to be invasive and not to be time consuming. So if you are someone that is looking for secure development practice innovation, or people that are, please do consider these hygiene factors. So that's actually all I've got to say. So my final point is, don't be afraid to reach out to me if you've got ideas or thoughts on what we can do to grow the community. Thanks for listening.